Welcome to my podcast, Not Just CAD. My name is Sean Bryant, and I'm an Autodesk expert elite who loves CAD, BIM, technology, and loads of other not just CAD stuff. Not Just CAD is the social media outlet of CAD FM consultants, and you can check out the Not Just CAD blog at www.cadfmconsult.com. Today, our guest is a long-time associate and friend of mine, Pete Kelsey. Pete owns VCTO Labs and provides, as he says on his slogan, technical solutions for storytellers. He's been featured in the National Geographic TV documentary Buried Secrets of World War II. He has also been the drone specialist in The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch on the History Channel. I first met Pete when he started working as the Civil 3D evangelist at Autodesk, and we've been great friends ever since. So, firstly, thanks, Pete, for joining me today and giving up your valuable time. I know that you are an extremely busy guy at the moment. So, for the listeners, please explain in your own words who you are, where you're from, obviously include the country for international listeners, what you do, along with a brief heads up about what VCTO are getting up to nowadays.
Wow. Okay. I'll take a deep breath. Let's see. Pete Kelsey, VCTO Labs. I cut my teeth in the AEC space, where Sean and I met. AutoCAD and I, AutoCAD and then Land Desktop, Civil 3D changed my life way back when. I sort of fell into the civil survey geospatial arena, which led me to really get excited about reality capture technology. So LiDAR, photogrammetry, sonar, you name it. When towards the end of my career at Autodesk, some friends and I, colleagues and I there, started the strategic projects program, which was just a new way to inspire customers, I guess, whatever the right word is, clients, inspire people um, about this technology, which I am still enthralled with, this whole reality capture space. And it worked incredibly well. We did an amazing array of high profile projects that got a lot of visibility in the media and television and did great for the brand. It did great for the customers. Anyway, when I left Autodesk, I was so hooked on this inspiring people to action. I started VCTO Labs. I can't say I thought of the name. It stands for Virtual Chief Technology Officer. A friend of mine said, you're just a virtual CTO. You've been doing that for decades. And I'm like, I like that. I think I'll run with it. And then the tagline, which you kindly mentioned, technology for storytellers, that's essentially what I do. And to put a fine point on that, I mean, name me a technology that provides context, inspiration, understanding better than reality capture. And people often pause. And then I right away say, you can't. So that's why I do what I do. Now I take all those things I learned in the early parts of my career and try to do the same thing, inspire people to, gosh, say wow, because with wow, all things are possible, right? With wow, conversation usually goes to tell me more, or who do I make the check out to, or, all the stuff that we want, both personally, professionally. I've been hooked on it ever since, and continue to run with it.
Excellent, excellent. So, you're now based West Coast USA, I believe, right?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, no, don't
Geographically,
worry, it's fine.
yeah. I'm in the United States, Pacific Northwest, Seattle area, actually.
Yeah, nice part of the world too. Not bad at all. Not bad at all.
Yeah.
So, Obviously, your career has changed over the years. I mean, both our careers, we've been kind of quite closely interlinked with all the stuff that we've done. We've always bumped into each other. You know,
Mhm.
primarily at Autodesk University was often a cold beer moment between us. We've often done that. Now, obviously, way back when, I was a civil and structural engineering technician. I don't even know if that job description exists anymore now, but that was way back when. But well, as you well know, my career path has changed dramatically. And like you, I absolutely love what I do, and I never thought I'd be kind of here interviewing people like yourself, for example. Like if somebody had said to me back in 1988, "Oh, you're going to end up talking to high level people in the industry on a podcast," I would have just said, "What's a podcast?" At that point,
Yeah.
that's kind of how it is. But I love partnering. I love empowering others in our industry. And obviously, you work in the AEC stroke GIS industry in a highly technical role. Obviously, you've explained it a little bit already in the previous kind of question when we talked there. But what made you make that career choice? What was the actual light bulb moment that went, "I'm going to do this"?
It's fun. I know this answer well. Uh, every year, Autodesk has their annual sales conference, which is the gathering of all the internal salespeople, all the partners, the resellers, basically everybody. It's thousands and thousands of people. And more than a few years ago now, on the heels of the Easter Island project, which was one of the first ones I ever did, high profile projects, that is. Um, I wound up on the bill at this conference called the One Team Conference, meaning main stage to present to the audience. And my job was just to present or to introduce the presenter, my to this day a dear, dear friend of mine, Sonia Haoa, who is native Rapa Nui, lives on the island, and she essentially got up. I'm paraphrasing wildly, but her presentation in her sweet, shy, sort of broken English to the audience, her message was, "Thank you for saving my country." And I heard it, but was ready to, I had to be ready to go up and help her if she got terrified or whatever. But the senior vice president of sales at Autodesk, who was sitting next to me, elbows me in the ribs and he says, "Pete, turn around." So I look over my shoulder at the 4,000 people in the room, and I would say half to two-thirds of the people were in tears. And that is where the lights went off, or sorry, went on. There's damn near an epiphany. It was, this is different. This is what I was hoping would happen. This is this is getting people to emotionally invest. Because let's face it, it's a sales conference. Oh my
Oh yeah, yeah.
God.
I've been to those. I've been to AU.
Oh,
There's been moments where you just kind of wish you were somewhere else.
yeah. Yeah. The agenda is what the agenda is, but this was different. And to see the audience react in that way was that epiphany moment for me. It's like in that moment, I literally knew what I wanted to do with whatever time I have on this planet.
Yeah, because you're getting that emotional engagement. I mean, you can get engagement, no problem at all. That I've experienced that with classes,
Yeah.
presentations I've done, but it's when you get them to invest emotionally with
Yes.
something that is very technical, that's when you get that crossover, like you say. And I can totally understand the light bulb moment there as well. I totally get it.
Yeah.
I mean, my light bulb moment was it was kind of forced on me, but it made me realize what attributes I had. And it was very simple. The reseller I was working for, they had to let me go. But the boss of the reseller said to me, "I can offer you 3 days training a week freelance. Do you want that?" I was forced into that. My son was 3 months old. My daughter was 2.5. I had a mortgage to pay. And it was like, yeah, I grabbed it with both hands. And I continued doing that work for them for many years, just going in every week and doing some training. But because of that, somebody I trained got talking to me about some of their issues within their organization. And I ended up with my first long term 9 month contract in a government organization, doing all the AutoCAD upgrades. I did the AutoCAD training. I was on the CAD committee. I set all their CAD standards. And suddenly it was like, this is what I want to do. I want to be an enabler. I don't want to be that click, click, click person every day. I want to enable people to get to where they want to be. So it was I want to be an A to C person rather than an A to B to C person. So that was my little light bulb moment. And yeah, we have them. And on the podcast, I always ask that question because that light bulb moment can define you. And obviously it did with you. And I always remember leading on to our kind of next question in the podcast, really. The first time we met was Copenhagen, Denmark, at an Augie CAD camp. And I can always remember I got a knock on my hotel room door saying, "Hi, I'm Pete, British Airways. I've lost all my luggage." That was the introductory line. And we've been firm friends ever since, right? That's
Yep.
kind of how it's been. But one of the lovely things about that particular CAD camp was you were our lunch and learn session talking all about Rapa Nui, the Easter Island project. And for me, being an avid fan of yours and what you do, that was my first experience of the kind of stuff you were doing with the Autodesk software. And I was like, wow, and like you say, that wow, it wasn't just that's really cool. It was like, wow, that's insane. That's really clever stuff. So the question kind of is, it's about the Easter Island project, is explain briefly the project and obviously, why it was done and why that lovely lady on that Autodesk stage said, thank you for saving my country as well. But also explain kind of back, because this is quite a while ago. What year did you do that project?
2007.
Yeah. So we're going back, nearly 20 years almost. So
Yep.
technology has moved along. So kind of explain how you set it all up, what technology you used, and what kind of data you got out of it back then. And then we can talk about how it's moved along.
Sure. Wow, another long story. I'll do my best to be brief. The genesis of the project was just my no short version. The genesis of the project was I was working. I had appointments in Buenos Aires and Santiago, Chile. Um, and I told my boss at the time, I'm going to take a few days off because I've always wanted to go out to Rapa Nui. I mean, bucket list kind of trip. I'm going to take some vacation. I'm going to go out and just have an experience. Well, I was a pretty new employee at Autodesk at the time, and one of three worldwide technical evangelists at the company, my charter being the civil products. Well, I also thought maybe I can double dip. So I took a ton of gear with me. I had RTK GPS surveying gear. I had a couple laptops. I had all the stuff that I traveled with at the time. And my hope was that I would meet somebody on the island who would find what I do for a living interesting. And met Sonia, and then boom, it blew up. The crazy part, where I took a huge risk, was when I came back and spoke to the same boss and said, something has happened on the most remote inhabited island in the world, where I think our customers, I think the Autodesk community would think this is great. And to his credit and his boss's credit, the senior VP of sales at the time, they both said, I'm not sure I get it, but I'm with you. There's something here. So go. So that evolved into putting together a team, brought in some early versions of terrestrial laser scanners that were huge and heavy and cumbersome. And what else? Looking to see what publicly available data was available for the island out there on the internet. And basically, through the cooperation of this amazing team that I put together, um, we mapped and modeled the entire island, but then we're able to put some of these scans, most notably the famous statues, the moai, place them on this model of the island. And that was all amazing and completely worthwhile. But strategically, the sort of behind the scenes objective was, let's help the Rapa Nui people um, make more informed decisions going forward about tourism, which has a huge impact on this tiny little island in the middle of the Pacific. And we did that. So, uh, gosh, and turning the clock back 20 years in terms of the tech, it was big, it was heavy. The data sets were enormous for the time. And just like with today, everybody was squawking about these data sets are too big for the laptop or the PC that I have. And this was before the cloud. It was new and a bit dangerous, but in terms of coming up with a solution to make it all work, but it worked, and we achieved the objectives. Uh, it was, well, I've already said it was career changing, if not life changing for me, and hopefully for a lot of other people who got to experience it. Since wound up, we made a documentary television show. We did the One Team conference. It wound up on a story in Fortune magazine, which I still can't believe because this was 2008 when the article came out, and this was right in the heart of the global economic meltdown. And
Yeah, I remember it well.
the leading financial music magazine, arguably, runs a story on how Autodesk is working with the Rapa Nui people to deal with the effects of tourism. It was
But
just,
but that's what I love about the. I mean, there's a lot of detractors out there that have their grievances with Autodesk, so to speak. But for me, I mean, I've been using their products since 1988, and one of the things that Autodesk have always done, regardless of who's at the top or who's the senior VP of whatever or whatever, is that they always want their software to be used to make things better, to empower, to create a design that is functional and works. And what you've done there with Rapa Nui is exactly it. You've gone out there, and obviously Autodesk have now got this phenomenal data set that they can obviously utilize and use as a customer testimonial, so to speak. But also, the people of Rapa Nui now can look at that and go, okay, we've now got an entire model of our island. Whatever we do to that island, we can now map out and check it works. And for me, that kind of sums up not just the ethos of Autodesk, but also that's kind of rubbed off on me as well. Because I'm one of these people that I kind of want to say to somebody, if you do it that way, you might not be doing it the best way. Try this way and see where you go with it. And it's really weird. I mean, I've had people in my classes where they've been using, say, AutoCAD for 20 years. And I'll show them just a little trick that I've used for years and years and years. And they'll go, I never knew that. That is going to save me hours of time.
yep, yep.
And it's like you say, it's those light bulb moments that make all the difference. Now, that it doesn't have to be Autodesk software either. It could be anything. I mean, one of the things that I love now, I mean, well, you've got lots of them sitting behind you, but I've got into drones now, as you well know, and we've had conversations about them. But somebody, a very well-known CAD journalist, Martin Day, he summed up reality capture, and you've used the term already. Reality capture gives you context. You're actually seeing something real that you can take from the real world and put into the digital world. And we're starting with, obviously, with the rapid advance of technology with the cloud and everything else. We're now starting to see that digital twin thing that everybody laughed about at one point. It's now becoming a reality, and I'm finding that absolutely fascinating. Watching how that is changing the landscape completely, if you'll pardon the pun. But it really is.
Well, and I can't help but ask, because we have very similar histories. I've been noticing how it's crossing the chasm, right? It's just history repeating itself. Because you and I went through 2D CAD to 3D CAD, 3D CAD to BIM.
Yep.
It's the same thing, right?
Mm.
It's just, oh, I recognize this. Yeah,
Yep.
it's the evolution of technology, change management, getting the people 20 years ago to the people right now going, 3D, witchcraft. No way, it's never
Yeah,
going to happen.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
well, the way I the way I try to inspire people about the opportunities in the reality capture space is less than 5% of the built environment has digital data.
Mm. It's a scary statistic, isn't it? It really is. And
Talk about an opportunity.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing is, as well, is if you've got it all mapped as, I'll say 3D model for now, to use a phrase to describe it. But if you've got a 3D model of something and you can navigate that now using the latest technology. So we've got things like
Mhm.
VR has all come back again. I mean, I can remember when I was a kid when the VR headsets first came out, and it was all, linked to gaming systems and things like that. Now, I mean, I was at Autodesk University a few years back, and I was able to stick a headset on and walk around the Trocadero in Paris and look at the Eiffel Tower and, change the traffic patterns and go from daylight to nighttime. And I'm like, this is insane. All this technology is there. And like you say, there's only 5% of it mapped so far. So
Yeah,
the opportunities are huge. They're absolutely huge.
yeah.
Now,
And the natural world
yeah, as well.
is even less.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, we're talking about things, nowadays that we wouldn't have talked about back then, like climate change and sustainability and environmental factors. I mean, something that is very close to my heart is the Barossa Valley in Australia, and we've talked about this at length about how drone technology could potentially help all those vineyard owners to manage those vineyards ecologically, save money and so on. And there's all these different ways and means of utilizing all that tech to develop an outcome that is not only sustainable, but could potentially assist that, say, those vineyard owners to maximize on their profits, to make their wine even better or whatever. I mean, I could wax lyrical about Australian wine, but I won't. But I mean, the fact, well, me and my
Well,
wife, we are donors to a vineyard out in the Barossa as well, and it's just we've got grandkids out there and so on, so we know the area.
yeah. Well, you touch on another, to me, another sort of elephant in the room as it relates to reality capture, 3D modeling, the metaverse, whatever you want to call it. It's the I have this conversation all the time with a client. It happened very recently with the on Alcatraz, which is, there is the project objective as it exists, contractually, et cetera, et cetera. But then when when that aha moment happens with the client, when they see the data and they start asking all the questions about what else could we do, what's fun for me, and you know the same thing. And this is the part I say all the time: whatever question they ask in that moment, the answer is yes.
Mm,
Meaning, could we figure out a way to increase our yield in our vineyard in Australia? Yes.
yeah.
Could we shoot a movie where Godzilla stomps across the Golden Gate Bridge and then has a seat on Alcatraz Island? Yes. Could we, the answer is always yes, because it's just software. So
Yeah.
that's the sort of the perfect other part, speaking
Well, it
about
is,
the
isn't it? I mean,
opportunity
the
for
software
reality
now
capture.
is an enabler. It's not some. I mean, all software has its limitations. I will put that caveat in there now. There are
Mhm.
limitations, but what I love now is if you look at the limitations when I first started using AutoCAD, let's say, as compared to something like Autodesk Forma now, where you've got a cloud-based BIM conceptual tool that is managing massive silos of data. It's all enabling as the technology improves. It's not going to change. That's just that
Yeah.
is that paradigm shift is just constant all the time. It really is.
If
So I want
somebody
to I
would
want
have
to
said
jump onto
that,
something else
uh,
now, which is
mhm,
close to you, close to your heart, actually, and it's also probably I would say it was when you and I suddenly realized that we both had very very similar interests in how the technology worked. Now that was the USS Arizona project, and I can remember we were at AU and there was this table with the 3D model of the USS Arizona. We were
yeah,
all told not to touch it because it cost so much to 3D print. I can remember Sean Hurley going, "Don't you dare go near it." So, but we got talking about it because that particular project that was for the National Park Service, right? If I remember rightly.
yes,
Now, for
yes,
those of you that don't know, the USS Arizona is actually a memorial and a war grave in Pearl Harbor. It was one of the US Navy ships that was sunk at Pearl Harbor in World War II. And basically, what you guys did was you utilized pretty much every type of technology to get a 3D model of that ship under the water for the National Park Service to monitor the actual wreck of the ship under the water. So, one, it's a massive project because, well, the first thing is you're under the water, scuba diving for a start. So, there's a limitation there. But what technology did you use when you were obviously under the surface to get the appropriate data that you needed to create that amazing 3D model that I saw at AU?
that was another uh, first ever combination of a couple of different sensor types. That we had uh, multi-beam side scan sonar. We had underwater photogrammetry, which we did as divers, just swimming around the parts of the ship that we could. We had a diver portable sonar that was, you could swim with it, a sonar head on it. I mean, amazing. Right out of like Navy SEALs type of thing. Uh, we had we had a laser scanner, a terrestrial laser scanner that worked underwater, which was at the time was that was bloody Star Wars. I couldn't believe it I was seeing. And I remember being in the, if you're in the water with it, you had to be in back of it because the laser was so powerful, it would blind you. Um, so mashing all those data types together and praying, frankly, that it was going to work because no one had tried this. And my assumption was, look, a point cloud is a point cloud is a point cloud. Um, I'm I'm going to take a chance this is going to work, and it did. And then the 3D print you saw, oh gosh, I just that thing changed lives. That thing inspired people. That thing started all the right conversations. But at the time, that was alchemy as well, right? 3D
3D
printing
printing
of,
was, yeah, yeah, absolutely.
yeah, a 600-foot long battleship. How do we scale it down? And how many pieces do we have to print it in? Because at the time, existing 3D printers, the printer bed was only this big or this big, or it was it was what I've always loved to do. It was putting a capital I in the word innovation. It's like, let's go out and try it. I think it's going to work. And if it does, amazing. And if it doesn't, hey, we're going to learn a lot from, like everybody does, from our failures.
Yeah,
And thank
yeah.
God it worked. But we
It
learned a
does go
lot from the
pear-shaped. I
successes as
mean,
well.
that's something that I say to everybody that I train. The only way you're going to learn is to make a mistake,
Mhm.
because then you know what's wrong and then you know what's right and you know how to move forward. That's really
Yeah.
important. And I mean, on a project like that, I'm pretty sure there were areas where it was like, that doesn't look quite right. I'm
Yeah.
sure there were, you had moments like that. And that'll be the same on no matter what project you're working on. But what I loved about it was, like you say, the aftermath of that one, where you had the World War II veterans. And if I remember
Yeah.
rightly, Sean Hurley presented one of the veterans with, I think it was like a little frying pan or saucepan from the wreck,
It
a
was
little
actually
3D
me.
print of it.
I did that.
Yeah.
It
It,
was,
it,
it
it was
was,
it was one of you guys. I remember talking to you about it, and
oh,
that went everywhere. That just went viral.
yeah, that
Because
was,
Pearl Harbor was, such an important event in our history. And the fact that,
it,
this guy was being presented with a little 3D print of something, from the ship that he served on in World War II is just amazing. That is the
yeah,
sort of human story that, for me, is why I do what I do. That sums it up. I love being involved in that particular ecosystem. That's why I love it. Now, obviously, I would have probably given my right foot to be under the water with you guys when you were doing that, because I've scuba dived in my time quite a lot, especially in my younger years. It would have been a fascinating dive, let alone doing the work and the photogrammetry and everything else. But yeah,
yeah.
absolutely amazing. Now, the big project that you've got going right now, which is doing the rounds and has just hit the New York Times as well, is you spent Christmas on Alcatraz. Now, obviously, I'm like, okay, that's not because of previous misdemeanors, I hasten to add, by the way. He was actually working. But that has fascinated me, because I've been to San Francisco many times, going out to the Autodesk offices, and Alcatraz is just that focal point in the bay. It's always there. We've had movies like Escape from Alcatraz with Clint Eastwood. We've had The Rock with Nicolas Cage and Sean Connery. Now, something that appealed to me about it, well, obviously I follow you on LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. There were some extremely humorous posts. The mug shots in the photo room were brilliant, by the way. They were fantastic. But but I've been following this particular project with avid interest. It's absolutely fascinated me. So, one, why did you do the project? Who was it for? Who was the client, etc.? But secondly, was there a game plan to find something specific on Alcatraz and the data and so on?
The genesis of that project was um, essentially determining how at risk Alcatraz is, specific to sea level rise, climate change. So that was the objective. But I knew, as we've talked about, having done this so many times before, I basically looked at the Park Service folks and said, "We're going to do that, no problem. All we need are the physics, meaning the data for projected sea level rise, which we have, it exists. We'll just throw that at the finished model, no problem. Easy to do, that's going to happen." But I said what I always said: once you realize what how this data can be repurposed, then the opportunities, 3D printing, virtual tourism, hey, there are other risks presented to Alcatraz and every other national park in the world. How about the effects of over 1.5 million visitors per year, right? So safety, security, operations and maintenance. We're in San Francisco Bay on the San Andreas Fault. What about getting the physics for a seismic event and throwing that at the model? Yes, we can do that. So we're still, post-processing about 4 terabytes of data. But as I've said before, the fun part, granted, sleeping in cells for 3 weeks on Alcatraz was an amazing experience, adventure, um, all made possible by yet another incredible team that I put together. Um, but the part that we're just about arriving to, the part where, wow, look at this data set. Oh my gosh, what else can we do with it? We're almost there.
That's fantastic. And one thing I loved, one of the posts, I mean, back in the day when I was younger, I was a big Clint Eastwood fan and obviously saw Escape from Alcatraz, which is based on a true story. And one of the posts that you put up was you actually discovered the route that the guy took to get
Yeah.
away from Alcatraz. And like you say,
Mhm.
once you've started 3D modeling all this stuff with the point clouds and the data set that you've got, you start seeing things and going, there it is. And there's the hole and there's the route that he took. And it's absolutely fascinating stuff. It
Yeah,
really
thanks.
is just,
Yeah.
I mean, it puts my little data set of my local church to shame, by the way. So, but
Oh, I don't know about that. It, it's. I'm sure there was discovery in that data set, as there is with
well, one of the
every
things
other
that's happened
reality
to me with
capture.
that is basically the parish where I live, they've got 3 churches. One of them is literally probably about 50 yards from where I'm sitting right now. And it's no, we won't get it chiming just yet. It's 6:45 in the evening here right now. But yeah, it's very local, and I got permission from the I think it was the curate of the church because my dad knows her and so on. So I just took the little drone out. I mean, my drone is tiny; it's a little Mini Pro 3, and I just bombed around, taking pictures, taking videos, and so on. And it was a learning curve for me because I've never done it before. But and there were various messages between us, like Pete, how do I do this? But I've now got a little Revit model of that church. It's not perfect, but I've got a little Revit model that I can spin around and look at, and it's got all the windows and everything else. And what I'd
Oh,
love to do over time is I don't know whether they'd let me do this, the next bit, but would be to get inside the church and perhaps do some LiDAR or drone photography inside. And then you can match the point clouds and you've got the entire digital twin. Now that would be
yeah.
fun. That would be very interesting. But
Yep.
but what I'm trying to get at here is the fact that I don't think it matters what size the project is. It all goes back to what I mentioned earlier. It's in context. You're actually looking at something that is digital that reflects an exact replica of what exists in the real world. So you're putting everything in the real world into context digitally. Now, I think at the moment you summed it up where there is a massive opportunity right now of just mapping everything. Now, obviously, there are going to be companies that are going to latch onto this and jump into it. There's, for example, we've got Matthew Bird with the Reality Capture Network, and we've got the RCN conference coming up in October. I'm hoping to be there because Matthew, I've spoken to him before, and I think you're going to be there. I think you're talking to Matthew as well. What he's
Yep.
doing for reality capture worldwide at the moment is amazing, and he has this vision of how basically you need to jump on the bandwagon now because if you don't, in 25 years' time, it's just going to be the norm. It's just going to be normal. It's something that's just going to be there. So you have to. It's a bit like, I suppose, if you think about it, that transition from drawing boards to AutoCAD in the 80s. It's that kind of level. It's that
it's
kind of
like
level.
we talked about, it's just history repeating itself. It's
It
like
certainly is. It certainly is.
innovation. It Another way of saying what you just said, it's like you probably want to get on this bus because if you don't, you're going to get run over by it.
Yep.
Um, you
It's
remind
going
me
that
of
way.
you remind me of an indicator being as soon as LiDAR became a sensor on an iPhone Pro.
Yep.
Any questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's an amazing thing. I mean, you mentioned that. Oh man, I'm trying to think of the app, Polycam, that came
Mhm.
out. As soon as LiDAR appeared on the phones, Polycam appeared not so long after.
Yep.
And I read a fantastic story in one of the CAD magazines about a year ago. A young lad, I don't even think he's in his 20s yet. He basically now drives around he drives around all of the UK now. And what he does is he polycams little weird objects like phone boxes and fire hydrants and gate posts and doorways. And what he does is he sells the little 3D models he creates to the gaming
Yeah.
industry
Yeah.
for like
Yeah.
£5 a go. He has just become a millionaire and he's not even 20. And I'm like, man, I wish I thought of that one. But Polycam has gone on into leaps and bounds. But what I love about a lot of these apps now is you can send them all the data that you've captured using that lidar scanner on your phone. They will put it into the appropriate format for you, so you're not even having to do all the donkey work of converting the point cloud or anything. They do it all for you, and they say, "Do you want it in a DWG file? Do you want it in an RVT file or whatever file?"
Mhm.
And I love that. That's where the whole industry, along with AI as well, which is another can of worms that's going to be opening. Well, it's already open, but it's going to open even further over time. What we're starting to see now is technology that takes away all of the manual labor, all of what I call that coalface work that we used to do. I can remember sitting there for hours working on 2D CAD drawings to get the elevations working so that the plan view worked with the elevation, the sectional view was correct. And you remember that, don't you? All the lines, transposing all the lines and trimming and tidying up and everything else. You don't need to do that anymore. I think it was an Autodesk article, and they were saying now that drawings and elevations and so on are simply now documentation of your design. The software now creates the actual design. You're not creating the drawings that represent the design anymore. It's the other way round. You're designing and you're saying, oh, give me a drawing of that.
Yep.
Boom, it's there straight away. Fusion 360 is a fantastic product that is based in the cloud and does that all for you. You design
Yeah.
the object in 3D and then you say, I need a side view of that with dimensions. Thank you very much. Couple of tick boxes, there's your drawing. Done
Yeah.
with a template.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's how it's going. That is how it's going.
There are probably people a third our age out there saying, drawings, what are those?
Yeah, I trust me. I had that at AU in November last year. I had
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
conversation with a young guy about Revit. I don't know if you're aware. There was an open letter sent to Autodesk about Revit and its development and so on. And he
I
was one of the
remember.
signatories of the letter. And I had the most fascinating conversation with him. And my immediate question was, why did you send the letter? What was your reasoning behind it? And we ended up talking about so many different things, about how standards need to improve, about how communication between different products needs to be improved, and so on. And the one thing I said to him, I said, you don't need to worry about that happening. That will happen, because that's one of the things that Autodesk do. They take stuff and jiggle it around, and suddenly it talks to other things. I mean, look at Autodesk Construction Cloud now. I never ever thought that would exist. That's an amazing, amazing piece of cloud-based technology, because everybody I mean, I can remember being on the construction site and holding down flat 2D drawings with bricks on the bonnet of my car so that the guys on site could look at the drawings. Now they're on an iPad, Apple Pencil, marking up variation orders, just quick click, go straight back to the office The drawing can be updated in real time. It's insane, just insane. Now, obviously, as I said, you and I, we do work in a very fast-paced technological world, and I always ask our guests. We all work hard, and you especially. You know, Christmas on Alcatraz just to get the right data set. I'm impressed. But basically, when you're at home, what do you do to relax nowadays? Do you just sit on the veranda, glass of wine, or do you
Oh.
surf? Do you ski? What kind of stuff do you do? Or do you literally just say to yourself, I'm done, I'm chilling out for the week?
Uh, well, you mentioned wine. There's a bit of that. I guess my, it's funny, I was just thinking about this the other day. It's cliche, I get it, but in my case, it's true, meaning I've known for many years now that I have the greatest job I I can imagine. So your question is hard to answer because I love what I do. I love what I'm doing. I can't wait for the next project. So what do I do when I'm not doing that? I'm always doing that. It's, every once in a while, I still play a bit of guitar. I watch probably too much TV. I mentioned my old friend wine. Well, in the company of old friends.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's I don't remember the last vacation I've had because I don't need one. I was on Alcatraz for 3 weeks. That was so much fun. And I was there with new friends, with old friends, with the technology I love, doing interesting work. Vacation? Really? A holiday? I'm living the
It's
life
really
of
funny you should
Riley.
say that. Yeah, it is really funny you should say that because it's I think I mean you and me both can relate to this. We've been around the block a few times. You know, we've been in this ecosystem for decades, right? And I have to say that I love what I do. It's not a job or anything. I just love doing what I do, and I always have done. And I think you're the same. It's when you find something to do that you absolutely love doing, it's not a chore. It's
Yeah.
just fun. I mean, I always reply to your posts on LinkedIn saying you get all the cool gigs, Pete. You do. I mean, you've done some amazing stuff in your career, but then again, so have I. I've,
You
I,
have.
it's great fun. I love. I mean, one of the things that I love doing, and it's a very simple pleasure, is speaking at Autodesk University. I
Mhm.
love getting up in front of 200 people and just saying, if you do this, you're going to be more productive at what you do on a daily basis in your role, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. And I just love imparting that knowledge. And one of the things that I always try and do, and you mentioned this earlier as well, is something like OTC, it's a sales conference. It's a very dry topic. And if you can provide something that people walk away from that dry topic saying, that was cool, that's kind of where I want to be. And it's lovely. I mean, some of the comments I've had about my AU classes have always made me smile. Um, I mean, Janice at Autodesk, she calls me UKRG because of my likeness to Ricky Gervais. So I've got the accent. I look a little bit like him as well. My kids have never let me live that one down, by the way. But the other one that I got a fantastic. This was actually a review of one of my AU classes saying I never ever thought I'd get taught AutoCAD by the Geico Gecko. Now, I'm English, right? I haven't got a Geico Gecko. What does that mean? So I looked it up. And of course, it's this little green gecko guy in the Geico insurance adverts.
Yeah.
And, if you listen to the Geico Gecko, it's me. It is my accent. And
Uh,
it's little
uh,
moments like that that for me just they provide that little bit of humor, that little breakdown. They make it human. That's what I love.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
love the human side of stuff. And obviously you do too. With
yeah.
what you do, you're giving people empowerment by going through all that data that you collate using all that technology. And it's great fun. It is great fun.
Well, and it's also, I'm sure you'll agree with this, it's also bi-directional, right?
Yeah.
It's on any project I've ever been on. Sure, I might have something to share, and I hope I inspire somebody. But without a doubt, because of these incredibly talented people like yourself who are in my circle, it comes right back at me. And I can't wait for that. Because the only thing that's better than making somebody else say wow is having somebody make me say wow, meaning, wow, Sean, I had no idea. That is wow. And then conversations and inspiration and innovation. And yeah, it's the secret to life, at least mine anyway.
Well, it is. I mean, cliches aside, it is that for us in our particular industry, it is kind of a circle of life, isn't it? Yeah, like we said,
Yes.
everything's gone full circle and it's all starting to happen again. And we're getting different wow moments with different things, but the circle just repeats itself.
Yeah.
Now, one more
Yeah.
thing I want to ask you is obviously when we first met, you had hair hanging down over your shoulders way back when, and
I
you
did.
were one of the members of a rock band, Dr. Ruth. Now, obviously, I've done a little bit of singing and songwriting in my time as well. And one thing I just wanted to ask you is obviously, it must have been so much fun being in a rock band, traveling around with your bandmates, and, some of the stories we've exchanged about who you've supported on stage and all that kind of stuff has been lots of fun. But as a fellow musician, I totally get that sort of need for guitars. Now, we know a number of people that spend obscene amounts of money on guitars. I won't name names, but a lot of them are ex Autodesk employees, unfortunately. Um, but I owned 5 guitars at one point. I'm now down to 2, which are my 2 lovely acoustics that I have knocking around the house. How many guitars do you still have? And do you have a favorite brand?
I only have two as well, but oh gosh, back in the day there were 20, 30. um, oh gosh, a favorite brand. Um, I am and have been now for some time. I'm a huge fan of Tom Anderson guitars. It's a boutique, Los Angeles based small company, but their products are just, if you want one guitar that can sound like a Les Paul, a Strat, a Telecaster, if you want, a stampede of elephants to come out of the Marshall stacks and, melt people's faces, these guitars can do all of that. And they're gorgeous. They're works of art. I'm a Tom Anderson Guitar Works, big fan. On the acoustic side, I've been a Takamine fan for 30 years. My
Yeah,
acoustic is a
I have to say
Takamine.
I'd love to own a Takamine. That's
Yeah.
I think that's possibly the only bucket list guitar I might still have to get at some point.
Ah,
Yeah, I like Tax. They are lovely, lovely,
oh,
lovely bits of. They're almost artwork because I mean, cliches aside here, as you well know, I'm a massive Bon Jovi fan. I have been for decades. That is John Bon Jovi's go-to acoustic, and it has been ever since I saw them live for the first time. And he's still got
yeah,
the same Takamine now. And for
yeah.
those of you that don't know, if you know the song Wanted Dead or Alive, that acoustic intro at the beginning, that's what he plays it on the Takamine. And it's just one of those things. You look at well, some people might just look at a guitar and go, it's a piece of wood with 6 strings on it. But for us, they're they're not just they're tools, they're objects of beauty all at the same time. And there's like you say, you'll suddenly find one that you love. I mean, I'm really lucky. I was endorsed when I was doing my music, I was endorsed by Hofner, who make Paul McCartney's violin bass.
Hmm.
And they gave me this beautifully just gorgeous grand auditorium acoustic. It's in black with a lovely brown neck on it. And it's been my go-to acoustic for years, but it's just
Hmm.
an object of beauty. You just look at it and you think, yeah. And I mean, there's probably people listening going, what are these two guys talking about? But it's
I'll tell you what, perhaps I can offer a segue. So what in the world do guitars have to do with, you know, not just CAD? Well, it's not just CAD.
yeah, yeah,
Well, to me, the segue is what we've been talking about is inspiring people to action. And anyone in the arts, anyone who performs, it's the same damn thing as sales, technical evangelism, inspiring people to action, all the things we've been talking about. If right down to, let's say you write a song, sooner or later you have to put that creation of yours out in the world. Well, on the
yeah,
CAD side, that could be a plan, a model, a set of drawings. It's the same thing. And what do we all hope? Oh, please let them like it. Please
absolutely.
let them say something great. And that's so, yeah, guitars, technology, they are absolutely linked. Oh, I think
And
that's why
weirdly
there are,
enough,
yeah,
something else as well. You saying that with that segue there is a lot of technical people that I've met over the years are artists and musicians as
musicians.
well. It's
They,
almost like that, like you
uh,
say, they're just inexplicably linked for some reason. It's
well,
strange but true.
I can remember a professor many years ago in school saying, "Well, wake up, Kelsey. Music is math." And I remember going, "Wow, yeah, music is mathematics." Now, that doesn't explain me because mathematics and I have never gotten along. I I hate it. Scares the hell out of me. I'm software dependent. Let the software do all the mathematics. But to me, that's an obvious link of why are there so many musicians in the design space?
Yeah,
Because we're all creators.
yeah, we create things. Absolutely. Now, I've got one more question for you, which I ask
Yeah.
everybody that is coming on the podcast. Obviously, you and I were of a certain age, unfortunately, but if you could go back in time to when you were 18, what one piece of advice would you give to yourself at that age?
Wow. Um, the first thing that comes to mind is just to be ready for anything. Be ready for the unexpected. One of those, life turns that you never expected. Um, and maybe to put a finer point on it, to not necessarily be afraid of it. Don't, sure, there will always be a reaction, whatever the initial reaction is, but perhaps give it a second thought because it could be an opportunity and it could be something you never expected. It could be something you don't even fully understand, but there could be magic. There often is magic in those moments. So that's the first thing that comes to mind is um, for me, it's morphed into a piece of technology is designed to do this. Cool. But then I have, because what's left of my brain says, well, what if it could do this? And the more people that say, you're crazy, witchcraft, you're mad, it'll never work, the more interested I become in seeing if it will see if it will work. So yeah, just to not fear creativity, innovation. It's often disguised as something else, especially when you're young, I think. Um, welcome the fear, drink it in, spit it back out, see what happens.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So I'd like to say thank you, Pete, for your time today. I know that you are incredibly busy. And it's been great to have you here on the Not Just CAD podcast, and some valuable insights there, I think, as well, which I really appreciate.
Well,
And
right back at you, my friend.
thank you. Thank you. So thanks ever so much, and have a fantastic weekend. Enjoy the wine, and I'm sure we'll talk again sometime soon.
Yeah. Until next time. Thank you, Sean.
Cheers, Pete. Thank you. Thanks for listening to Not Just CAD, the podcast that covers CAD, BIM, technology, and lots of other not just CAD stuff. Tune into the next podcast on all the usual outlets. You can also find Not Just CAD on Instagram and Threads, and you'll find me, Sean Bryant, over on LinkedIn and Facebook. Not Just CAD is the social media outlet of CAD FM Consultants. You can check out the Not Just CAD blog at www.cadfmconsult.com.